I'm sitting here in my living room, the soft hum of the old clock my late husband built marking time's passage. It's a small, cozy house, filled to the brim with memories, each corner telling a story of love, loss, and everything in between. My name's Margaret, but everyone close calls me Maggie. I'm 69 years young, a retired school teacher who's seen her fair share of life's ups and downs. My son, Jack, is a strapping lad of 42. Married for more than a decade, he's got a daughter, Lily, who's as bright and lively as a 10-year-old can be. Then there's Emily, my daughter-in-law. Our relationship's been, well, complicated, to put it mildly. Mom, you sure you don't need anything else done around here? Jack's voice pulls me from my thoughts as he stands in the doorway, concern etched on his face. I shake my head, offering him a smile. I'm all set, sweetheart. This old house is holding up just fine, thanks to your dad's handiwork. He nods, though I can tell he's not entirely convinced. All right, but if you need anything, you call me, okay? Don't bother with Emily, you know how she gets. I sigh. Jack, she's your wife. I don't want to cause any trouble between you two. He shrugs, a bit of frustration showing. Yeah, well, things have been tense. But we'll manage. We always do. The conversation shifts to lighter topics, Jack filling me in on Lily's latest school project and Emily's plans for the weekend. But there's an unspoken tension in the air, a distance that wasn't there before. As Jack leaves, promising to visit again soon, I can't help but feel a pang of loneliness. The house feels emptier without the laughter and chaos that used to accompany my son and his family's visits. The phone rings, shattering the silence. It's Emily, her voice icy as she speaks. Margaret, I need you to watch Lily tomorrow. Something's come up. I bristle at her tone, but my love for Lily wins out. Of course, I'll watch her. She's my granddaughter, after all. Emily's reply is curt, a simple thanks, before she hangs up. I stare at the phone, a mix of sadness and frustration churning within me. What happened to the days when Emily would chat with me about recipes and gift ideas for Jack? When did everything become so transactional? I spend the rest of the day tidying up the house, preparing for Lily's visit. It's in these quiet moments, surrounded by the love and care that went into building this home, that I find my strength. This house, built on memories, stands as a testament to the life my husband and I built together. And no amount of tension or harsh words can take that away from me. Back in the day, life was simpler, or so it seemed. I was still teaching, shaping young minds, while my son Jack was just starting to make his way in the world. Emily entered our lives like a whirlwind, full of ideas and ambition, which I admired, even if we didn't see eye to eye on everything. Mom, I want you to meet Emily, Jack had said, his eyes shining with that look of love I hadn't seen in a long while. I think she's the one. I remember meeting her for the first time. She was outspoken, a stark contrast to the quiet steadiness of my Jack. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Thompson, she'd said, offering me a firm handshake that somehow felt more like a challenge than a greeting. I smiled, trying to ease the tension. Call me Maggie, dear. Mrs. Thompson makes me feel like I'm still in the classroom. She laughed, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. All right, Maggie it is. Jack's told me so much about you. Those early days were a mix of getting to know Emily and adjusting to the new dynamics she brought into our family. Jack was smitten, and I, despite my reservations, hoped for the best. Emily would often come to me for advice, especially when it came to Jack. Maggie, what does Jack like to eat? I want to surprise him, Emily asked one afternoon, her tone softer, almost vulnerable. I found myself warming to her in those moments. He loves beef stew, the way his dad used to make it. I can show you if you like. And so, we cooked together, a tentative peace forming between us. But it wasn't always easy. Emily had strong opinions, especially about how Jack should be advancing his career, which often led to heated discussions. Jack needs to be more ambitious, Maggie, Emily would say, her frustration evident. He's too comfortable here, too stuck in his ways. I'd bristle at her words, defending my son. Jack's doing just fine. He's building his life, his way. Not everyone needs to chase after money and status. She'd sigh, rolling her eyes. You don't get it. We need more if we're going to make something of ourselves. Despite these clashes, I saw how she pushed Jack, how they grew together. When Jack landed a well-paying job and later started his own business, I couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for Emily's drive. Yet, as their fortunes changed, so did our relationship. The visits became less frequent, the conversations more strained. Emily's requests for my help or advice dwindled until they stopped altogether. I missed my granddaughter terribly in those days. Lily was a bright spark, always eager to learn, to explore. I cherished the moments she'd spend with me, her laughter filling the house with joy. Why doesn't Grandma come over anymore? I overheard Lily ask her parents one day, her voice tinged with confusion and sadness. Jack was quick to reassure her. Grandma's always welcome, sweetheart. We've just been busy, that's all. But Emily's response was cooler, more distant. Your grandma has her own life, Lily. We can't expect her to be around all the time. I bit my tongue, refusing to let the hurt show. Instead, I focused on the love I had for my family, holding on to the hope that things would improve. It was Lily's 10th birthday, a milestone I'd been looking forward to for months. I had a special gift picked out, a book of fairy tales I knew she'd love, each story carefully chosen to spark that bright imagination of hers. But then, the unexpected happened. I didn't get an invite to the party. Not a call, not a message, nothing. It was as if I'd suddenly become invisible to them. Puzzled and hurt, I picked up the phone and dialed Jack's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful yet harried. Hey, Mom. What's up? Jack, I was just wondering about Lily's birthday. Is there a party planned? I tried to keep my voice light, but a note of disappointment must have crept in. There was a pause, then, what do you mean? Emily sent you an invite weeks ago. She said you told her you couldn't make it. Said you had other plans? My heart sank. No, Jack, that's not true. I didn't receive anything. I wouldn't miss Lily's birthday for the world. I could hear the confusion in his voice as he replied, that's weird. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. I'll talk to Emily and get back to you. But he never did get back to me about it. The next day, through the grapevine of small-town gossip, I found out the party was happening at their house, not out of town as I'd been led to believe. Feeling a mix of anger and sadness, I decided not to confront them about it. Instead, I dropped off the gift at their doorstep early in the morning, hoping Lily would at least know I'd thought of her. A few days after the party, I bumped into Karen, a neighbor, at the grocery store. She was all too eager to spill the details of the party, not realizing I hadn't been there. Oh, Maggie, it was such a lovely do. Emily outdid herself this time. Shame you couldn't make it, though. Lily kept asking for you. Karen chattered on, unaware of the hurt her words inflicted. I forced a smile, thanking her for the update, and quickly made my excuses to leave. The walk home felt longer than usual, each step heavy with the weight of betrayal. The situation gnawed at me until I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. So, I called Jack again, this time more determined. Jack, we need to talk about Lily's birthday, I said, cutting straight to the chase. There was a heavy sigh on the other end. Mom, now's not a good time. We're swamped with orders at work, and Emily's not been feeling great. I persisted. I understand, but I need to know why I was told the party was somewhere else when it wasn't. Why was I lied to, Jack? There was a long pause, then Jack's voice, weary and a bit defensive. Mom, it's just. Emily thought it would be easier this way. She felt the dynamics have been a bit off lately and didn't want any awkwardness at the party. I felt a rush of anger and disbelief. So, you decided to exclude me? To lie to me? Is that how we're solving problems now? Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. Emily, she's got a way of seeing things, and sometimes it's just easier to go along with it. He tried to explain, sounding exhausted. I was too hurt to argue further. I see. Well, I hope it was worth it. I hope lying to your mother and excluding her from her granddaughter's birthday felt easier for you. Mom, please. Jack's voice cracked a little. It's not like that. But I didn't want to hear any more excuses. I have to go, Jack. We'll talk some other time. Hanging up, I felt a mixture of sadness, anger, and resignation. It was clear that my relationship with Emily, and now perhaps even with Jack, was more fractured than I'd realized. After the birthday mess, things went quiet. Too quiet. My house, cozy as it is, started feeling too big, too empty. That's when I decided to get myself a little company. A small dog, a bundle of energy and love. Named him Buster. The moment I laid eyes on him, I knew he was the one to fill the house with life again. I couldn't wait to tell Lily about Buster. She's always loved animals, and I thought this might just be the thing to get her to visit. Picking up the phone, I dialed their number, heart racing a bit as it rang. Grandma. Lily's voice, bright and cheerful, filled my ears the moment she picked up. How are you? Doing just fine, love. Guess what? I've got a surprise for you. A little dog named Buster, I said, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. Really? A dog? That's awesome. I want to see him. Can I come over? Her enthusiasm was music to my ears. Of course, sweetheart. Anytime you want, I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. Turns out, I didn't have to wait long. That very afternoon, the doorbell rang. There stood Emily, looking as if she'd rather be anywhere else, and Lily, eyes sparkling with excitement. We can't stay long, Emily announced, barely crossing the threshold. Ignoring the tension, I ushered them into the kitchen, deciding to make the best of it. Let me get you some tea and cake. Make yourselves at home. As we settled, Emily's eyes roamed, landing on the new oven and the bits of new furniture around the house. These are new, she remarked, her tone sharp. Who bought them for you? My son did, for my birthday, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. Her face turned a shade redder, anger flashing in her eyes. You shouldn't be demanding money from him like that, she snapped. Before I could even think of a response, Lily came running in, a scratch visible on her arm. Emily saw it and lost it. That dog of yours bit my daughter, she accused, voice rising. He didn't bite me, Mom. I scratched myself outside, Lily tried to explain, but Emily wasn't having any of it. We're leaving. And we won't be back, Emily declared, dragging Lily away before I could even get a word in. Once they'd left, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I needed some sense talked into me, so I called my sister, Carol. Carol, you won't believe what just happened, I started, recounting the whole ordeal. Carol, ever the voice of reason, listened quietly before speaking. Maggie, don't let it get to you. It's clear as day that dog didn't bite anyone. Emily's just looking for an excuse. But Jack won't even answer my calls now, and neither will they, I said, feeling defeated. Give it time, Maggie. They'll come around. And if they don't, well, you've got Buster and me. We're your family too, you know, Carol replied, her voice firm yet comforting. She was right, of course. Buster wagged his tail, looking up at me with those big, loving eyes. No words needed. He was here, and so was Carol. Maybe that was enough family for now. Thanks, Carol. I needed that, I said, feeling a bit better. Want to come over and meet Buster? I thought you'd never ask. I'll be right over, she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Hanging up, I looked down at Buster, who seemed to sense my mood had lifted. Looks like it's just you and me, kid. And Carol, when she gets here. We're gonna be just fine. A year. A whole year without a word, without seeing their faces. The silence was deafening, the loneliness, a constant companion alongside Buster. Then, life threw another curveball, pneumonia. It hit me like a freight train, landing me in the hospital, before I even knew what was happening. Carol, bless her, was by my side every day, worry etched deep in her brows. Lying there, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed, I felt the weight of the year's silence heavier than ever. "Carol, can you call Jack for me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It was a long shot, but I had to try. She hesitated, knowing all too well the silence that had filled the void between us. But she nodded, pulling out her phone and dialing Jack's number. I listened, holding my breath, as she spoke. "Jack, it's Carol. Your mom's in the hospital. She's very sick." "Yes, pneumonia. She's asking for you." The pause that followed felt like an eternity. Then, I heard him, his voice distant but clear, "I'll come now." True to his word, Jack arrived at the hospital, a storm of emotions playing across his face. He approached my bed, taking my hand in his, eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have been here," he started, his voice breaking. "I've been such a fool." I could barely speak, my illness and the emotion of the moment rendering me weak. "Why, Jack? Why did you believe that, about Buster?" He looked away, shame coloring his features. "Emily told me, showed me a scratch on Lily's arm. Said Buster attacked her. I was angry, hurt. I thought I don't know. I just..." Listening to him, it was clear how deeply the lie had cut, driving a wedge between us. "Jack, you know Buster. He wouldn't hurt a fly." "I know now, Mom. I saw him, he's gentle." "Emily, she lied to me." "I'm so sorry. I should have known better," he admitted, his voice laced with regret. The admission, the apology, it was bittersweet. My heart ached for the lost time, for the pain we'd both endured because of a lie. "Jack, it's okay. We're here now. That's what matters," I said, squeezing his hand, offering forgiveness, because holding on to anger would only prolong the pain. He nodded, wiping away a tear. "I'm going to make this right, Mom. I promise." Hearing those words, feeling his hand in mine, I believed him. Maybe this was the start of mending what had been broken, of healing not just my body, but our family too. Things were just starting to look up when out of nowhere, trouble came knocking again. This time, it wore a suit and called itself a lawyer, claiming to represent Jack. The voice on the phone was all business, saying he needed me to sign some documents, because Jack was abroad and in a bind. Something about the whole thing smelled fishy to me. First thing I did was try calling Jack, but wouldn't you know it, his phone was as good as a brick. No answer. That's when I got that sinking feeling in my gut. I rang up Carol, told her to come over quick. "Something's not right," I told her, pacing the floor until she showed up. When the lawyer showed up, all smiles and handshakes, I knew I had to play it smart. He pushed a stack of papers towards me, saying it was all just formalities, that Jack needed this done pronto. "I'd like a minute to read these, if you don't mind," I said, trying to buy some time. "Oh, there's no need to worry. It's all straightforward," he assured me, but I wasn't buying what he was selling. I needed Carol to get a look at these documents without him hovering, so I suggested a little stroll in the garden. "Let's get some fresh air, then I'll sign," I proposed. To my surprise, he agreed. While we were outside, Carol was inside, snapping pictures of the documents with her phone. Turns out, those papers were nothing short of a nightmare. They were trying to get me to sell my house for peanuts and ship off to a nursing home, claiming I was too sick to take care of myself. Before I could process it all, Emily stormed in, red-faced and yelling like a banshee. "Just sign the damn papers, Margaret. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I stood my ground, refusing to be bullied. "I'm not signing anything until I talk to Jack," I said firmly. That's when I called the police. Emily was livid, spewing lies about me having dementia, trying to paint me as some doddering old fool. The police showed up, and Emily switched gears, playing the concerned family member. But we had proof. I showed them the audio recording of the lawyer's spiel, and Carol showed them the photos she'd taken of the documents. Emily's tune changed real quick, then. The police took her in for questioning, and the whole house of cards she'd been building came tumbling down. After the fiasco with the lawyer and Emily's plot being foiled, things started moving quickly. The police had enough evidence to start unraveling the tangled web of lies that had been spun around me. But the real turning point came when Jack finally got back from his trip abroad. He was shocked to learn about the chaos that had unfolded in his absence. Jack came straight to my house, a mix of worry and anger clouding his face. "Mom, I just landed and heard about what happened. Can you fill me in on everything?" I sighed, looking at my son, seeing the confusion and hurt in his eyes. "Jack, it's been a mess. That lawyer, the one Emily hired, tried to trick me into signing away the house. And if it weren't for your Aunt Carol, I might have fallen for it." Jack's face turned red with anger. "That's unbelievable. Emily told me she was just taking care of some family business while I was gone. I had no idea she was plotting something like this." Carol, who had been a rock throughout this ordeal, chimed in. "We caught everything on tape, Jack. And I took pictures of the documents they tried to get Maggie to sign. It's clear as day what their intentions were." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe she'd go this far. To think, she used our daughter to further her lie. I'm going to confront Emily about this. She needs to explain herself." The confrontation between Jack and Emily was inevitable. He left our house, determined to get to the bottom of things. When he returned, he was alone, his expression somber. "Mom, Emily," she admitted to everything. "Said she felt cornered, that she didn't know what else to do. I told her it's over. We're getting a divorce. I can't be with someone who'd put my own mother through something like this." Hearing Jack's words, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth was finally out, but sorrow for the pain my son was going through. "Jack, I'm so sorry it's come to this. But I'm proud of you for standing up for what's right." Jack nodded, pulling me into a hug. "I should have listened to you sooner, Mom. I'm just glad you're okay." In the days that followed, we worked on healing the rifts that had formed. Jack was a frequent visitor, often bringing Lily along, who was overjoyed to spend time with Buster and me. The ordeal had brought us closer, reminding us of the importance of family and truth. After the storm comes the calm. That's how it felt once everything with Emily was settled. Jack got the divorce finalized, and though it was a tough period for him and Lily, they started to find their rhythm again. Life at the house felt fuller, happier with their frequent visits. It was like we were all breathing a bit easier, ready to welcome whatever came next with open arms. One sunny afternoon, as I watched Jack and Lily playing with Buster in the garden, I realized how much things had changed. Jack walked over, settling down beside me with a sigh. "Mom, I've been thinking," he started, watching Lily throw a ball for Buster. "I want to start fresh, maybe even move closer to you. What do you think?" I smiled, the idea warming my heart. "I think that's a wonderful idea. Having you and Lily nearby would be a dream come true." Lily ran over, breathless and laughing. "Grandma, did you see how fast Buster is?" Her eyes sparkled with joy, so much like her father's. "I sure did, sweetheart. He's got quite the sprint on him," I replied, hugging her close. As we sat there, chatting about school, friends, and all the little things in between, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. The ordeal we'd gone through had somehow brought us closer, strengthening the bond between us. Later that week, Carol dropped by for her usual visit. Over cups of tea, we reflected on the past few months. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, our lives found a new normal. Jack and Lily did move closer, just a few streets away, making spontaneous visits a regular occurrence. The laughter and love that filled my home were a balm to my soul, healing old wounds and bridging any gaps that had formed. One evening, as we all gathered for dinner, Jack raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, to family, and to a future filled with love and laughter. We've come through the storm, and now it's time to enjoy the sunshine. We all echoed his sentiment, clinking glasses and sharing smiles. It was a simple moment, but it held the weight of everything we'd endured and overcome together.
Just because we're family doesn't mean I'll let you ruin us, I whispered defeatedly into the dark as I recounted the money in my drawer. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast eerie shadows across the room, but it was enough light to confirm my fears. There was a significant sum missing from my personal savings. My hands trembled as I sorted through the bills, the stark realization sinking in that this wasn't the first time. Over the past few months, I had noticed a gradual depletion, but I had brushed it off, convincing myself I must have miscounted or spent more than I thought. Now the evidence was undeniable. A creak in the hallway made me jump, and I hastily stuffed the money back into the drawer, my heart pounding in my ears. Evan shuffled into the room, his eyes heavy with fatigue and worry etched deep into the lines of his face. "You're still up?" he mumbled, sinking onto the edge of the bed. I swallowed hard, forcing a tight smile. Just couldn't sleep. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him. Not yet. Evan nodded absently, his mind clearly elsewhere. This was becoming increasingly common. The distant gaze, the preoccupied demeanor, the late nights out with flimsy excuses. Something was deeply wrong, and the missing money only added to my growing sense of dread. As he drifted off to sleep beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing with questions and doubts. Was Evan the one taking my money? If so, why? And how could I protect our family from whatever troubles he might be facing? The weight of the secrets hanging between us felt suffocating, and I knew I couldn't let this fester any longer. Tomorrow I decided I would find a way to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Just because we're family doesn't mean I'll let him ruin us. The next morning, my hands shook as I placed the hidden camera in the living room, angling it discreetly towards the hallway leading to our bedroom. A pit of dread formed in my stomach, but I knew I had to catch Evan in the act. I couldn't let this torment of uncertainty continue. Later that day, as Evan left for his meeting, I hurried to check the footage. My heart sank as I watched him sneak into our bedroom and rummage through my drawer, stuffing handfuls of cash into his pockets. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, and I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. When Evan returned a few hours later, I was waiting for him in the living room, the damning video queued up on the laptop. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained emotion. Evan paled as he took in the scene before him, his eyes darting between me and the computer screen. "Mara, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped, hitting play on the video. We watched in silence as the footage played out, the sickening reality of his theft unfolding before our eyes. When it ended, Evan slumped into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry," he mumbled, his words muffled by his palms. "I have a gambling problem. I owe people money, a lot of money." The confession hung heavy in the air, and a wave of nausea washed over me. All this time, while I had been working tirelessly to support our family, he had been squandering our hard-earned savings on his addiction. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, my voice rising with each word. "To Lila? To your own mother?" Evan flinched at the mention of our daughter and his mother, who lived with us. "I never meant for it to go this far," he pleaded. "I thought I could win it back, pay off my debts." "You lied to me," I spat, disgust curling in my gut. "You looked me in the eye and lied, day after day." Evan nodded miserably, unable to meet my gaze. In that moment I saw him for what he truly was, a man consumed by his vices, willing to sacrifice everything for the thrill of the gamble. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do next. "You need help, professional help," I stated firmly, "and until you get it, you're not going anywhere near our finances again." Evan's head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. "But Mara, please, I'll get it under control, I swear." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "I can't trust you anymore, Evan. Not after this. I gestured to the laptop, the evidence of his deception laid bare. As I watched him crumble before me, a part of me ached for the man I had once loved. But the greater part, the part that longed to protect our family, our future, hardened with determination. I would do whatever it took to shield us from the wreckage of his addiction, even if it meant tearing our lives apart to rebuild them anew. In the days that followed, Evan seemed to be making an effort. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and agreed to hand over control of our finances to me. I kept a close eye on our bank statements, desperate to believe that he was finally on the path to recovery. But deep down, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was still off. Little things kept catching my eye. The way Evan would tense up whenever I mentioned money, the furtive glances he would cast around the room as if afraid someone was watching. One evening, as I was going through our mail, a letter from the bank caught my attention. It was a statement for a credit card account I didn't recognize. Frowning, I tore it open, my heart sinking as I scanned the charges, thousands of dollars in cash advances and gambling-related expenses. I confronted Evan as soon as he walked through the door, thrusting the statement in his face. "Care to explain this?" He blanched, stumbling back a step. "Mara, I can explain." "Save it," I spat, fury bubbling up inside me. "You promised you were getting help. You said you were done with this addiction." Evan ran a shaky hand through his hair, his eyes darting around the room. "I am getting help, I swear. It's just harder than I thought." "Harder?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been lying to me this whole time, stealing from us again." Evan opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, too angry to listen to his excuses. "How can I ever trust you again? You've betrayed us, betrayed our family." As the words left my lips, I saw Eleanor hovering in the doorway, her face etched with concern. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously. I turned to her, the statement crumpled in my fist. "Your son has been gambling again, racking up debt behind our backs." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Evan, a flicker of something like recognition passing over her features. "I knew it," she murmured, shaking her head sadly. "I saw the signs back when he was a kid, the lies, the sneaking around. It all makes sense now." Evan flinched as if she had struck him, his face flushing with shame. "You mean you suspected something like this before?" I demanded, whirling back to face Eleanor. She nodded solemnly. "I caught him stealing from me a few times when he was a teenager. Small amounts, but it set off alarm bells. I tried to confront him about it, but he always denied everything." Evan dropped his gaze to the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the weight of Eleanor's revelation settled over us, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. If this was a pattern, a cycle that had been going on for years, then I knew what I had to do. "Enough is enough," I declared, my voice steely with resolve. "We're not going to enable this anymore, Evan. You need to get serious help, or—" I trailed off, letting the unspoken threat hang in the air. Evan lifted his head, his eyes haunted with the realization that this time there might be consequences he couldn't gamble his way out of. After the confrontation with Evan and the revelations from Eleanor, I felt like I was living in a waking nightmare. The man I had vowed to love and cherish had been lying to me, stealing from our family to feed his insatiable addiction. In the days that followed, I kept a close eye on our finances, determined to uncover the full extent of Evan's deception. As I pored over bank statements and credit card bills, a sickening pattern began to emerge. Cash advances, wire transfers, even loans taken out against our home without my knowledge. My hands trembled as I printed out the damning evidence, the numbers swimming before my eyes. How could he have done this to us? How could he have risked everything we had worked so hard for? When Evan returned home that evening, I was waiting for him in the living room, the stack of papers laid out on the coffee table, like a twisted monument to his betrayal. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice deathly calm. Evan froze in the doorway, his eyes widening as he took in the scene before him. "Mara, He trailed off, his gaze dropping to the floor. "You what, Evan?" I prodded, anger simmering beneath the surface. "You thought you could keep lying to me? Keep stealing from our family?" He flinched but remained silent, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I demanded, gesturing to the documents. "You've taken out loans against our home, put us in debt up to our eyeballs, All for what? Another roll of the dice. Evan lifted his head, his eyes pleading. I wanted to protect us from bankruptcy, he mumbled, his words ringing hollow. I let out a mirthless laugh, shaking my head in disbelief. Protect us? By gambling away our future, our security? How can you possibly justify this? Evan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He knew there was no justification, no excuse that could undo the damage he had caused. You've betrayed us, Evan, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You've betrayed our family, our trust. How can I ever believe a word you say again? He hung his head, shame etched into every line of his face. In that moment, I saw him for what he truly was. A man consumed by his vices, willing to sacrifice everything for the thrill of the gamble. As I stared at the crumpled figure before me, I knew that things could never be the same between us. The man I had loved was lost, perhaps forever, to the grip of his addiction. But even as my heart shattered, a steely resolve took root within me. I would not let his selfish actions destroy our family. I would fight with every fiber of my being to protect what was left, our daughter, our home, our future. And if Evan couldn't find the strength to conquer his demons, then I would have no choice but to cut him loose, once and for all. In the weeks that followed my discovery of Evan's deception, a palpable tension settled over our household. Evan had promised to seek professional help and attend regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings, but I found it increasingly difficult to trust his words. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Eleanor approached me in the kitchen, her expression grave. Mara, we need to talk, she said, her voice low. A knot of dread formed in the pit of my stomach as I set down the knife I had been using to chop vegetables. What is it? Eleanor glanced over her shoulder, as if afraid of being overheard. It's about Evan, she continued. I saw him yesterday at the casino downtown. The air seemed to leave my lungs in a rush, and I gripped the edge of the counter for support. You're sure? I managed to choke out. Eleanor nodded solemnly. I was running errands in that area and spotted him through the window. He was sitting at a poker table, playing like he didn't have a care in the world. White-hot fury surged through me, mingling with a sickening sense of betrayal. After everything he had put us through, after all his promises to get help, he was still gambling, still lying to our faces. That lying son of a... I began, but Eleanor held up a hand, cutting me off. I know, believe me, I know, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disappointment. But we can't let him continue down this path. Not anymore. I took a deep, shuddering breath, willing myself to remain calm. What do you suggest? Eleanor's expression hardened, a steely determination settling over her features. We need to take action, she stated, for Lila's sake, if nothing else. My heart clenched at the mention of our daughter, who remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil her father's addiction had caused. I couldn't bear the thought of her finding out the truth, of her world being shattered by Evan's selfish choices. You're right, I agreed, my voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within me. We can't let him drag us down any further. Together, Eleanor and I began to formulate a plan, a way to confront Evan with the evidence of his deceit and force him to face the consequences of his actions. As we discussed our options, a sense of grim resolve settled over me. Evan had made his choices, time and time again, choosing his addiction over his family. Now, it was our turn to choose, to fight for our future, even if it meant cutting him loose once and for all. As I looked at Eleanor, her eyes burning with a protective fierceness, I knew we were united in our determination. We would do whatever it took to protect our family, to secure our financial stability, and to ensure that Lila's future wasn't gambled away by her father's vices. Evan had betrayed us for the last time. Now he would face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful they might be. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I had anticipated. Eleanor and I had gathered irrefutable evidence of Evan's continued gambling, photographs of him at the casino, bank statements showing unexplained cash withdrawals, even receipts from seedy establishments known for hosting underground poker games. As Evan strode through the front door that evening, whistling a cheerful tune, I felt a surge of white-hot anger coursing through my veins. How dare he act so carefree, so oblivious to the turmoil he had inflicted upon our family? Evan, we need to talk, I stated, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. He froze, his brow furrowing as he registered the steely expressions on Eleanor's and my faces. "What's going on?" he asked, a note of trepidation creeping into his tone. Without a word, I strode over to the coffee table and snatched up the stack of evidence, thrusting it towards him. "Care to explain this?" Evan's eyes widened as he took in the damning photographs and documents, his face draining of color. "Mara, I can explain," he stammered, but the words rang hollow, even to my own ears. "Save it," I spat, my patience utterly depleted. "We know you've been lying to us, Evan. We know you've been gambling again, squandering our hard-earned money on your addiction." Evan flinched as if I had struck him, his gaze darting between Eleanor and me, panic etched into every line of his face. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, tears of rage and betrayal stinging my eyes. "To Lila? After everything we've been through, after all your promises to get help?" Evan opened his mouth, but no words came out. For once it seemed his silver tongue had failed him. "You've put us in debt, Evan," Eleanor chimed in, her voice laced with disappointment. "You've risked our home, our financial security, all for the thrill of the gamble." Evan shook his head vehemently, his eyes pleading. No, you don't understand. I had it under control. I was going to win it all back." A bitter laugh escaped my lips, disbelief mingling with disgust. "Win it back? Evan, wake up! You've been spiraling deeper and deeper into this addiction, lying to us every step of the way." He flinched again, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "How could you gamble with our daughter's future like this?" I pressed on, my voice thick with emotion. "How could you put your own selfish desires above the well-being of our family?" Tears spilled down Evan's cheeks, but I felt no pity, only a bone-deep weariness. I was tired of the lies, the excuses, the broken promises. "We've given you chance after chance, Evan," Eleanor said, her tone gentler than mine but no less resolute. "But you've squandered every opportunity, every second chance we've offered." Evan shook his head weakly, but we both knew the truth. He had dug himself into a hole so deep, there was no easy way out. As I stared at the crumpled, broken figure before me, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. This was the moment, the pivotal point, where everything had to change. "It's time to face the consequences of your actions, Evan," I stated, my voice steadier than I had expected. "No more lies, no more excuses. This ends now." He lifted his head, his eyes swimming with desperation, but I had already made my decision. I would no longer enable his self-destructive behavior, no matter how much it hurt. This was the only way to save our family, and if Evan couldn't see that, then he would have to learn the hard way. The weight of our confrontation hung heavy in the air, the silence thick and suffocating. Evan stood before us, shoulders slumped, his eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Please," he croaked, his voice cracking with emotion. "Give me one more chance. I swear, I'll get help. I'll turn things around." I felt a flicker of pity stir within me, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of his lies, his betrayal. How many times had we heard those same empty promises before? "Your chances ran out a long time ago, Evan," I stated, my voice hard and unyielding. "We've given you more opportunities than you deserved, and you squandered every single one." Evan flinched as if I had struck him, his gaze dropping to the floor in shame. "This has to stop, son," Eleanor chimed in, her tone tinged with sadness. "We can't keep enabling your addiction, not when it's destroying our family." "But I need help," Evan pleaded, desperation lacing his words. "I can't do this alone." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You should have thought of that before you gambled away our savings, our trust, our future." Evan opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Enough," I said firmly. "We're done with the lies, the excuses. It's time to face the consequences of your actions." Fear flickered in Evan's eyes, and he took a step back as if recoiling from a physical blow. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice little more than a whisper. I steeled myself, drawing in a deep breath. "You have two choices, Evan. Either you get professional help, real help, and relinquish all control over our finances, or—" I let the unspoken threat hang in the air, letting the weight of it sink in. Evan's eyes widened, darting between Eleanor and me. "Or what?" "Or we expose you," Eleanor stated bluntly. "We take everything we know, the evidence, the documents, the pictures, and we make sure everyone knows the truth about your addiction." A strangled sound escaped Evan's throat, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Your job, your reputation, your relationships, they'll all be at risk," I continued, my voice unwavering. Not to mention the legal consequences of the loans and debts you've racked up. Evan shook his head vehemently, his face pale. You can't. You wouldn't. Try us, I challenged, my gaze steely. We're done watching you gamble away our future, Evan. It's time to take back control. A heavy silence fell over the room, the weight of my ultimatum pressing down on us all. Evan's eyes darted between Eleanor and me, searching for a glimmer of mercy, a flicker of hesitation. But there was none to be found. We had both reached our breaking point, our love and loyalty stretched to the limit by his selfish actions. This is your last chance, Evan, I said, my voice softer but no less resolute. Choose wisely. Evan swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. For a long, agonizing moment, he remained silent, the gravity of his decision hanging in the balance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he gave a slow, defeated nod. Okay, he whispered, his voice cracking. I'll do it. I'll get help. As the words left his lips, I felt a surge of relief mixed with trepidation. This was the first step, the first glimmer of hope that we might be able to salvage what was left of our family. But deep down, I knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous, paved with temptation and the ever-present threat of relapse. Evan's addiction had taken root deep within him, and it would take every ounce of strength and determination we possessed to uproot it. Yet as I looked at Eleanor, her eyes shining with a mixture of sadness and resolve, I knew we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together as a family, no matter the cost. In the weeks that followed Evan's agreement to seek help, a fragile sense of hope began to take root within me. He enrolled in an intensive outpatient program and attended regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings, his demeanor subdued and contrite. Yet, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts that gnawed at the back of my mind. Evan's addiction had taken such a firm hold, consuming him so completely. Could he truly break free from its clutches? My suspicions were confirmed one fateful evening when I received a call from an unknown number. Frowning, I answered, only to be met with the gruff voice of a man I didn't recognize. "Is this Mara Lewis?" he asked, his tone laced with barely concealed hostility. "Yes, who is this?" I replied, my heart rate quickening with a sense of foreboding. "This is Tony Russo," the man stated, his words clipped and accusatory. "I own the poker room down on Maple Street." My blood ran cold as realization dawned. This was one of the seedy establishments where Evan had been known to frequent, feeding his addiction with high-stakes games. "I don't know what kind of game your husband is playing," Tony continued, his voice lowering to a threatening growl, "but he better pay up and fast." A wave of nausea washed over me as the implications of his words sank in. Evan had been gambling again, racking up debts with dangerous individuals. How much does he owe you?" I managed to choke out, my throat constricting with a potent mixture of fear and anger. Tony rattled off a staggering figure, one that made my head spin with its sheer enormity. "Look, lady," he snarled, "I don't care how you get the money, just make sure your husband settles his tab. Otherwise, there might be consequences neither of you want to face." The line went dead, leaving me trembling in the suffocating silence of our living room. Betrayal and disappointment surged through me, bitter and all-consuming. How could Evan have done this after everything we had been through? After all his promises, his vows to change? As the minutes ticked by, the anger within me solidified into a steely resolve. I could no longer stand idly by, enabling Evan's self-destructive behavior. It was time to take drastic action, no matter how painful it might be. When Evan finally stumbled through the door hours later, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes disheveled, I was waiting for him, the damning evidence in hand. "Care to explain this?" I demanded, thrusting Tony's number and the record of his debts into Evan's trembling hands. His face drained of color, and he opened his mouth, but I cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Save it," I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "I'm done with your lies, your excuses. You've betrayed us for the last time, Evan." Evan shook his head vehemently, his eyes pleading. "Mara, please, I can fix this. Just give me another chance." But his words fell on deaf ears. I had heard that same refrain too many times before, each promise hollower than the last. "You had your chance," I stated, my voice steely and unwavering. "And you blew it, just like you've blown every other opportunity we've given you." Evan crumpled before me, his shoulders shaking with sobs, but I felt no pity, only a bone-deep wariness and a grim determination to protect what was left of our family. "Pack your things," I ordered, my heart hardening against his pleas. "You're leaving tonight." As the weight of my words settled over him, Evan lifted his head, his eyes shining with unshed tears and a dawning realization. This time there would be no second chances, no mercy. He had gambled away his last shot at redemption, and now he would have to face the consequences of his actions, alone.